Hello class, I'm Dr. K. I hope you all are doing well, and welcome to this video presentation on Housemaid of Dawn author N. Scott Momaday and the art of Kiowa storytelling. Before we covered Housemaid of Dawn in class, I had admittedly not heard of Momaday. However, I found the interview that we looked at in class to be very interesting, and I immediately recognized Momaday as someone who is passionate about his craft and is great at talking about it. I also have to admit that while I'm an English major, I'm on the language, writing, and rhetoric track of the major. So most of my studies have more of a focus on the nonfiction side of writing, and I personally never had much of an interest in poetry. I bring this up because while before Momaday published Housemaid of Dawn in 1968, the majority of his work was focused on poetry. However, in this interview that we watched of Momaday in late October, I found the ways that he described poetry and the craft of storytelling to be very approachable, and it allowed me to have a much greater respect for Momaday's writing and the various forms of storytelling in general. It is clear that Momaday's love and passion for storytelling comes from his background. He was born in Walton, Oklahoma in February of 1934, while his mother, Natachi Scott Momaday, was from Kentucky and was English, Irish, and French. She was also, as Momaday put it himself, some degree of Cherokee. Along with this, his father, Alfred Morris Momaday, was a full-blood Kiowa. Momaday actually credits lots of his interest in storytelling, especially oral storytelling, which is seen some in Housemaid of Dawn, to his father. Momaday said that his father knew a lot of oral tradition from Kiowa and was a very good storyteller. In one specific interview from 2010, Momaday recalls how much he enjoyed some of these stories, with him asking to hear some specific stories over and over again. While like nearly any child would, he admitted that he took them for granted at the time. It is very clear that later in his life he had a deep appreciation for Kiowa storytelling. He even said that later in his life he realized that these types of stories are fragile and even on the verge of extinction. This deep admiration for Kiowa storytelling that Momaday shows got me interested in learning about what exactly Kiowa and native storytelling was, and when I looked into this, I found out how much this style of storytelling is seen in Momaday's work. Based on my research, what I view as one of the most clear descriptions of Kiowa storytelling is from Benjamin Crock of Northeastern University. So as you can see, some of the main characteristics of Kiowa storytelling and seemingly native storytelling in general include multiple voices to represent several different characters, moments of silence for listeners or readers to participate, and sometimes leaving stories unfinished or open-ended so that listeners or readers can draw their own conclusions. Now, I'm choosing this specific description to represent Kiowa storytelling because as soon as I read it, I immediately thought back to that 2023 interview with Momaday that we looked at in class. I had remembered that in that discussion, Momaday also brought up the importance of silence. This quote that is on the bottom of the screen now, I even used in my discussion on that interview at the time. I find this idea of focusing on the silence in storytelling to be very interesting. This is clearly an element of Kiowa storytelling that Momaday carried with him throughout his life and even put into his work. I feel that this description of Kiowa storytelling, along with Momaday's later emphasis on silence, fits Housemaid of Dawn very well. Knowing this background about Momaday and the specifics of Kiowa storytelling that he grew up with, I feel that it is easier to understand and appreciate Momaday's writing style more, and it helps explain the very non-linear nature of Housemaid of Dawn. Just like Crock mentions in his definition, we see several different voices throughout the novel, many time jumps, and pieces of information that are omitted completely, which allows room for interpretation and, in a way, allows readers to almost participate in the story as they can draw their own conclusions. More specifically, oral tradition, which is the key aspect of Kiowa storytelling, is seen through the priest of the sun and his sermons. Throughout his career, oral storytelling was a key aspect of Momaday's work, as he taught many courses on Native American oral tradition at University of California, Santa Barbara, Stanford, and the University of Arizona. Along with this style of writing that is seen in Housemaid of Dawn, I also want to briefly highlight how Momaday's life helped shape the inspiration for the novel. In Momaday's book, A Way to Rainy Mountain, he describes how the character of Abel was inspired by much of what he saw growing up in Jemez. Along with this, While it didn't seem to be as much as some of those he grew up with, or as much as the character like Abel, Mamadeh and his family were also impacted by World War II, and his parents took a break from working with the Indian Service to work for the war effort. The family briefly moved to Hobbs, New Mexico, as his mom worked at an Army air base and his dad worked as a draftsman. Following this, Mamadeh and his family moved to Jemez, which is a place that he spoke fondly of throughout his life. He even included many events that he saw in Jemez into Housemaid of Dawn, such as the chicken pool. I found this information very interesting to learn about. As I mentioned earlier, I find Mamadeh to be such an insightful person, even as someone who typically doesn't focus on the same type of writing as him. I really, I really enjoyed listening to him talk about language. He was able to make the concept of communication and storytelling sound so important and gave the topic so much depth. I also admire how he seemed to appreciate his culture and the places that he lived. This look into his background gave me a great appreciation for the art of storytelling and for the work of Mamadeh. Thank you for listening.